Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Daily Word. Today's Wednesday, December 29th. Glad you could join me for a few minutes together. We inch closer to the to the end of year 2021 and ready to celebrate a new year in our midst. And so glad you could join me as we continue our pursuit of the Daily Word and what it means for us and how it applies to our daily lives. So we continue. And so I know you're probably wondering, is Jim ever going to get over talking about the wise men? And I will. I promise I'll get over talking about the wise men. But the story continues just to fascinate me and continues to spur thoughts in me about what their journey means for us. And I think that's the most important thing. It's what we've tried to do together in this daily word, is to think about how the scripture, how it applies to us and how it might help us just in the living of our lives. And so this story continues in Matthew, and it is chapter 2, verses 9 through 12 today. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. So, we live these interesting lives. We sometimes call, our lives journeys, and we like to go on journeys. We pack for vacations, we pack for trips because, well, if you're like us, normally we overpack way too much stuff. But, we pack for trips and we get all of our stuff ready because we anticipate, what's going to happen on those journeys. And so the wise men, in their quest, if you will, for finding the Messiah, the Christ child, they packed and they traveled, they endured, they persisted. And the reason they went, initially, the reason they went is for the purpose of worship. Now, when we worship, it's the opposite of some personal kind of pursuit. Worship is the lifting up, the exaltation of someone else. It's us having to choose some kind of self-denial in order to exalt the other person. And of course, for us, that is God, when we worship God. So when we make our journey to church on Sunday morning, or in our case, a lot of times on Wednesday night, we come not in selfish pursuit, but into the pursuit of learning who God is and to figure out what it is that God calls us to. So for these wise men, they did the same thing. They had to put aside their own agendas to come and to worship the Messiah. And the wise men gave of themselves and left their lives, to come and to do this thing. So I was fascinated by this whole story of the wise men. The reason that they came, they saw the star. We talked about that yesterday. Herod says, go ahead and go, and then let me know what you find out. And the wise men come, and the scripture says to us that when they came to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshipped him. And they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. So I wonder, in thinking about this particular text, when we have waited, when we have sought, when we've prepared, when we've pursued God in our lives, what does that mean for us? How do we go about that? We do it in worship. We do it on Sunday morning. We gather on Wednesday nights, and we do all kinds of learning. But here's the thing that jumped out at me about this text, and maybe we'll reach the end of the conversation about the wise men. So the wise men came, the scripture says. They bowed down and worshiped the child when they saw him there with his mother. And then they offered him the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, what jumped out at me about this particular piece of this story is that the wise men assumed they would discover something good in their pursuit and in their search because they came prepared to find it. They packed their stuff. They packed the gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And when they arrived there, they weren't surprised at what they found. Instead, they were prepared to worship when they followed the star. I wonder for us, if we're always prepared, as the wise men were, to find what it is we're looking for. If we come bringing all of ourselves, in relationships, in worship, in learning together, in Bible study, whatever it is, do we bring all of ourselves? Do we come fully prepared, expecting to find God, if you will, in the end, in the mix? Do we come prepared? Do we pack all of our stuff and come prepared knowing that we're going to find and we need to bring the gifts that we've been given? Wouldn't it have been a tragedy if the wise men had traveled that far without expectation, without hope of finding the answer, and get there and find it, and then have to turn around and go back because they don't have any gifts? Can you imagine the tragedy of that? No, instead, they brought the gifts with them. We're ready to enter a new year. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to enter a new year. Whatever it brings, it's always good to turn the calendar, especially when you get this late in the year. It's always good to turn the calendar. And we've had our share of struggles, all of us, in 2021. Some of us have had COVID. Some of us have, we've stayed locked down. We've missed out on a lot of things. We've shared in losses and grief together. It's good to turn the calendar here in a couple of days. As we head into 2022, I want to challenge us to be like the wise men, to bring the gifts for the expected outcome, to enter 2022 expecting life and God to move in us, expecting life to be good, expecting grand things to happen in our lives. Wouldn't it be such a tragedy to arrive in 2022, not let go of 2021, not bring the gifts and the expectations for these good things to happen in 2022, get there, get a month or 2 months or 6 months in, and then find out we just can't go back? You see, I think the wise men teach us to joyfully lean into the journey and to bring the gifts that we have and go fully into the journey. It's in the midst of grief that we find God. It's in the midst of hope that we find the presence of God. The gifts that the wise men bring, we know them, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but they really bring worship. And what they find in the midst of that is rest for their weary souls. And they find in the end, they're warned in a dream to go home a different route. And they find then this new journey, this new way to go where God is calling them to. I think that's good advice for us as we head into the new year. Just to go headlong in and to bring what we have and be prepared for the journey and expect with high expectation that God's going to move and God's going to shape us and guide us in all of our lives. Maybe for us, our heaven meets earth moment is when we bring all of ourselves and we come expecting God to move in us. I wonder how many times we come to church or whatever it is that we do, and we just don't expect the best. And of course, when we don't expect it, then we're disappointed. And I think the ways that we expect the best things to happen in our lives is to come prepared, expecting God to move in us. You know, I said what jumped out at me is the wise men, they had their gifts. They were expecting where the star stopped to find the Messiah. I think it's good advice for us. Expect God to move in us in the new year. I know I'm ready for a new year. We're not partiers, you know, on New Year's Eve, so we're not gonna end 2021 at a bang, but hopefully we'll begin 2022 with the expectation that God's going to do great things in us. So be prepared, be ready, pack your bags. The journey we're going to be on together is exciting and filled with possibility of God moving in us. Have a great day. Know of God's love that surrounds you. Know of my love for all of you. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Have a great day.